Hi, welcome to the Crop and Create Delivered Blossoms and Breezes kit video number 1. I'm designer Jen Gallagher, and we're going to use some of the embellishments and papers found in this kit to create a layout. The first thing that I have done is I have placed this cloud pattern paper. It is from the Stitched collection as the foundation of my page. Then I've taken this number paper and layered it on top. To the bottom of that paper, I'm going to add some of this gray cardstock that you can see I've cut into a scallop shape. I'll add a bit of adhesive to the bottom, and then I'm going to make sure that the textured side of the cardstock is the part that's showing. Once that's attached, we will attach the entire piece to our layout. I'm going to off-center it just a little bit. To the left side of the layout, I'm going to do a little bit of layering. I'm going to start with this pattern paper that has these floral designs on it on one side, and then it has this creamy background with some pink elements. I'm going to tuck this right behind. We're going to do a bit of layering on this particular page. To have a successfully layered page, you want to start with items that are both subtle in pattern as well as items that are more busy in pattern. So for instance, the cloud is a little bit subtle, but the number paper is a little bit more bold. On top of that, I'm going to place the journaling, and I have printed it out on one of the sheets of cardstock. To use it on my printer, I cut it to 8.5 by 11 inches wide, and then I cut a strip that is about 1 inch to 1.25 inches high. And then I simply added some adhesive to the back, placed it on my printer paper, and then ran it through the printer. This allowed me to print directly onto that beautiful blue cardstock found in the collection kit. Again, I'm going to layer this on the side, so I'll turn the layout just a little bit, and I just want to center that right on that pattern paper. On top of the number paper, I want to tone it down just a little bit. To do so, I'm going to use a pattern paper, and you'll notice that this pattern paper is double-sided. One side is this black gingham, and one side is more just kind of forms that you might find in a vintage notebook or something. So we're going to use that vintage notebook side to kind of tone down the number paper. So what I've done is basically covered most of that background paper so that you get a hint and a view of it, but it doesn't overwhelm the page. To the top here, I'm going to add this beautiful circular flower. It is burlap, and to the back, it doesn't have any adhesive. So what I do is I figure out the placement. I leave my finger there, and then I'm going to use some red double-sided sticky tape. And this is a very strong adhesive. When you're using the burlap flower, make sure that you use an adhesive that is strong enough to hold it on the page. So just kind of plan ahead. Now you could do layering onto actual embellishments, and there's so many different embellishments in this kit that I wanted to use this technique. Again, to the back of this particular wooden embellishment that says Memories, I have already placed some double-sided red sticky tape. Now again, I chose this because it is a little bit stickier than a normal kind of adhesive you might use like a dot runner. And we'll just center that right below so that it says Memories. To the button that's found in the circle, I'm going to take this layered dimensional sticker from the Chamel line, and it is sticky on the back, but because it is meant to stick on paper, I want it to be a little bit stronger. So to the back of it, I'm going to add a few glue dots. This just makes sure that it sticks a little bit better to the burlap. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cover up that button. The fun thing about covering that button is that because the button itself is dimensional, it pops that number 2 off the page. The photos that I'm using for this particular layout are photos of a field trip I took with my son, and I've printed one a little bit larger at like a 4x6 size, and then I've printed one a little bit smaller. You can see the measurements here on the video screen, so if you want to recreate this exactly in the same size as I have, you can use these measurements. You'll notice that I picked a scene as well as an element that is a highlighted element, so you can see the tulips here in the background, but they're a little bit faded out. This helps to tell the story a lot better. We'll place the first photo down, and we're going to go slightly underneath that burlap flower. And then we're going to take this squirrel statue And we're going to place it slightly behind. It's just a little bit more interesting when you have a couple of different sizes of photos on a page. Then to cover this gap at the bottom, we're going to use the other side of this notebook paper. And that is the gingham side. And we want to cover both that pattern paper as well as the other items that we have. Now I want to move these photos down just a bit so that I cover a little bit more of the page. And I want the bottom edge of those photos to slide into that gingham border strip. So I'm using an adhesive that is actually a permanent adhesive, but because I quickly pulled it up, it works just fine. One thing I'm already noticing with this burlap edge is that it's kind of slipping and sliding around, and I want it to hold in place. So I'm going to take a glue dot, I'm going to place it underneath that burlap and just poke it down. That keeps it from sliding a little bit. Behind the squirrel photo, I'm going to use this remember tag, and I'm not going to use all of it, so I'm just going to cut it off. And then to the top of the tag, I'm going to take some of the black gingham ribbon from the collection to tie a bow. And I just hold it down with my hand, and then I tie a bow to the top. You could do whatever ribbon you want from the kit. If you're using different papers, you could use the yellow ribbon. You could use twine, whatever you have on hand. Straighten out the ribbon, trim off the excess pieces, and then we can attach it to our layout. Again, we're going to slide it right behind that squirrel statue photo, but I do want to be able to read the text. And it says, remember that one time. And then we want to make sure that bow can be seen. To the top of this photo, I'm going to take one of the paper clips. You'll notice that it is gold. Now when using a paper clip, I usually start to bend it up just a little bit so that I can easily place it on my page, and then I'll bend it back down so it holds in place. So a little bit of gold peeking through. To the top of this larger photo, I want to bring in some more of that black. You see I have a couple of black elements, but I want to bring in some more. So I'm going to take the button element that is a half circle from those fancy pants buttons, and now you can see I've created this visual triangle of black items. To this bottom border down here, I want to bring in some more of the colors we've been using, so I'm going to go back to those buttons that I just used. And you can see that I've cut the buttons with the plastic still intact. That way I can move things around and see where I like the placement. There are adhesive pieces on the back of each of these buttons, so it makes placement and holding them in place very easy. So you can see I've just created a cluster of buttons. Now something fun I want to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a metallic element to each side of this journaling block, and I'm going to do so with staples. So you just want to use a standard stapler. You don't need a long reach one, it just needs to be long enough to go through. I'm going to staple between the blue and that pink pattern paper, and you can do one on each side, or you can do two. But that just gives it a little bit of unexpected metal, which also brings in and marries it to the paper clip. The final thing that I want to do is I'm going to add a die cut title. Now this particular kit comes with several custom designed die cut shapes. I'm going to be using the Hello Spring die cut. And I want to show you that when I was cutting the die cut, because of the size that I cut the die at, it tore the O away from the L. But as I was peeling it away from the back of the paper that it was on, I just was very careful. And I'll show you how you can make it work even though it tore just a little bit. If it tears a lot, you need to recut it. And if it tears, it's either the cardstock that you're using, the speed of the blade, or the size of the shape. So the first thing I would do is try resizing the shape, slow down your blade, and then finally change out the paper and try a different paper. I'm using a Zig glue pen to glue the back onto the die cut, and I'm going to place this in pieces. We'll start with the ING. Once I get that how I want, I'm going to come back and do the rest of the title. And then we'll fill in with that O. And you can see that if If you're very careful in your placement, it won't matter that the cut didn't cut perfectly the first time. Overlap the SPR with the ING. And it slightly overlaps my photo, and that's okay. Now to the O, we'll again add some glue on the back. And then I will simply trim off that teeny tiny little piece that ripped. And we're going to pretend that that O was independent. And we will just stick that right next to the rest of the die cut shape. So without knowing that I had cut it out and then parts of it didn't stay connected, you would never know. It still looks beautiful. So here's a layout that uses the Crop and Create Delivered Blossoms and Breezes kit. If you're wanting the sketch for this particular layout, be sure to follow the links included with the kit to download both the digital die cut shapes as well as the sketch for this particular layout. Watch for 2 additional layout videos coming soon that feature this kit.